Kanga Audio.
A quick thanks before we start the show. Filmmaking Confidential, the book, is getting rave reviews from readers, filmmakers, film professors, and even people in creative fields other than filmmaking. I just want to say thank you to all of you who ordered it and for your support. If you haven't yet picked it up and you want to learn more filmmaking secrets, Filmmaking Confidential is for you. It's available wherever books are sold in most countries around the world. Order it by visiting Audible or Amazon. To find out more, check out filmmakingconfidential.com and stevebalderson.com. And thank you. I'm Steve Balderson, and you're listening to the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. Each week, we meet with filmmakers, writers, actors, artists, and other notables. Many episodes include questions or commentary from other filmmakers listening to the conversation. Today's guest is filmmaker and actor Doug Hurley. His most recent short film, Suicide Date, premiered at the Dances with Films Festival in Los Angeles, winning the Audience Award for its category, as well as the overall Audience Award for the entire festival, qualifying it for the Academy Awards.
I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I took an engineering scholarship. So I was in the honors engineering program for a while, but I'd acted in high school and stuff like that. So I eventually transferred over to theater and got my degree in that. So I was acting when you met me. Yes.
Why?
Why?
Why were you acting? Did you like it?
I did like it. That's why I was doing it.
Had you done it before engineering?
Yeah. I'd done it in high school. I got into it, however I got into it, and done some plays in high school. I think I got into it in junior high or something like that. And I enjoyed it. It's interesting. The nice thing about, I'm sure, any of the arts and acting, especially doing it for a while and knowing a bunch of other people, it seemed like always a really great, in general, gateway sort of thing. Like if you continued with acting, great. If you got into another aspect of the the industry, great. But I feel like I know a lot of friends that maybe aren't doing it anymore, but it allowed them to grow as a person, and like get more in touch with themselves and learn all these different things and work with a bunch of people, which is obviously useful for life. And for a lot of people that say move to New York, so I lived in New York before this, or Los Angeles, that's what got them here. And then they figured out what they were supposed to do after that. Like this person became a writer, or this person became a raw dog food chef, or whatever it happened to be, which would have never happened had they not come out here and been exposed to that, or become a meditation teacher or something like that. And it's never wasted. It was, speaking of college, I thought it was always very funny. The people, they'd be like, oh, I'm a something major. And they're like, oh, I hate it. And it's like, well, why don't you change? And then they're always like, oh, I don't want to waste 2 years. It's like, what? Okay, first off, I'm sure a lot of things transfer. Two, the life experience and the things you've learned, definitely nothing's wasted, but even more so, you don't want to waste quotation mark 2 years, but you want to waste 80 years doing something you hate. You're like, what? So for me, I've been acting, and which is interesting too, actually, because I started, I don't know if this is true for you, but it's very interesting, the things you get into and you realize they were there all along, you're like, oh, I got into writing, but wait, I kind of always thought that way, or the way I'd written invitations or emails. Oh, that was always kind of there. And even directing too. I was like, oh, I haven't directed before. And it's like, wait, I've been really doing all this visual stuff for a while. And then, acting and being on sets and working with people. But then even weirdly, I'd actually got my master's in, my project was directing, or I was a fight choreographer. So like a fight director, so all this stuff had kind of been circling around for a while. I did end up getting into some other things and writing and then directing. And then I even recently got into painting, which was interesting because, I've always been into art. I've been collecting art for 15 plus years. I've always been into comic books, but never that. And then it started messing around with some stuff. And now I'm actually painting on big canvases, things like that. And, when you do a lot of different things, which are all feeding off each other, it's great because you can do this for a while and you're trying to do everything at once. But then I had to really sit down with myself and be like, okay, is this what you should be doing? Or is this something where you're just still acting because you don't want to give up, or you don't want to, because you said you were going to, or you don't want to be a failure, which wouldn't be the case at all. Like I said, you learned a lot of things from it. Or when people always talk about how relationships that don't last forever still can be very successful. It's like, oh my gosh, I got so much from that experience. I got so much from that relationship. But I had to actually ask myself, are you still into acting? Because I was getting so busy with stuff, I felt like I wasn't able to really focus on one thing because I was trying to do so many things. You know how that goes?
Yeah.
And then it was really interesting because I was like, no, I sat down with myself and I was like, oh man, actually, I kind of feel the best I've felt about acting, as far as like, oh, I feel really comfortable with it. I want to do it. It still excites me. I feel like I'm finally, in some ways, figuring it out for the first time, or being really good at it for the first time. So then I was like, okay, all these things you really do want to do and seem like the right thing. You're not just doing them because you think you should, or you have been the whole time, or something like that. So then I was like, okay, cool. All right, well, you're doing these for the right reasons, or you feel called, or this all feels good. So then it was like figuring out how to balance all that stuff. Any of those things, especially with acting, and just like, it seems like a good general thing for anybody to get into. You have to work with people. You have to express yourself. You have to be vulnerable, all these different things, whether you stick with it or not. So it's been very interesting, obviously, as time passes or you age or whatever, to see where people end up. Like maybe people became more successful. Maybe they're doing it, they're making their own stuff because they're not trying to be in the system, but they're just trying to make this, like, how you do. You're like, okay, I want to make this thing. You're doing it because you have stories that you want to tell. You're not doing it because you're like, I want to be famous, or I want to make this type of movie. And then that's also why, and then people will see that. And, it's like, oh, on your set, it's like, oh, here's a person that knows very well what they're doing and professional and organized and cares about us and makes a very nice experience. Oh, let's all get together and make this thing because we want to, let's make this painting. Let's make this album. Let's make this movie, and so everybody's got their own journey with all of that. And so it's just very interesting to see where people end up or what they branch off into. So many people started off as one thing and now they're doing a different thing, things like that.
To just keep going, everything that you're saying it's true because we evolve. I mean, oftentimes we evolve within the field, but I know that some of my interests have certainly changed over the years.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a couple of years ago, I was interested in maybe doing, something else like maybe another album or something. And
yeah,
the interest in all that there anymore, it just wasn't enough. Whereas
it's interesting how, I'll go ahead.
Well, you can be driven to do something.
Sure. And sometimes it's like an ongoing thing, and sometimes it's kind of a one-off. It's like, I'm still into filmmaking, and it can go up and down. You can do it in different ways. And it's like, I want to make an album. I've made an album. I'm good. I want to experience something. Is it kind of a one-off? Is it something you did for a little while? Because I've done so many things just for a summer, a few weeks, or one or two projects, and then there's the things that you keep coming back to.
Right. For instance, I've still not ever made a short film.
Oh,
and
do you want to? Do you need to?
Here's the funny thing. Well, see, I don't think it's those questions.
Well,
because
I think it's what fits the medium. Like your story was like, well, this thing I want to express as a painting, this thing I want to express as an album, this things I want to express as a feature. There's probably an idea that you want to express that is not a feature, but it is actually a short film. You're not making a short film to make a feature. Like I can't get the money, or I'm scared. It's like, oh no, that's what this is. Like this is a poem. This is a live performance. This is a short film.
Exactly. And I do have one. And
Great.
It's
is it the one you told me about?
Well, in my book, there's a chapter called Tale of the Emerald Digger.
Oh yeah.
When you get to that chapter, have you read that chapter?
I did. I loved that. And great book, by the way. I love that just came out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, it totally did, but no explanation. And I thought that was perfect. It wasn't like, I am telling you this story for these reasons. It like made sense why that story was in there. And then it was really a really cool way to do it, because then you get what you take from it. In the same way you would an album or a music, you could infer whatever you wanted to. And in that way, I think it was more effective or hits you harder than like, here's a story I'm telling you to illustrate my point. This was the point. Do you get it now? You're just like, here's a story at the right time, told in the right way. And then I was like, oh, and it was great too, because I was like, oh, I think that's what this is about. And I was like, is it? Also, since you didn't spell it out, it could kind of bounce around in me for a while and maybe affect me in a different way. Or then later on, it's like, oh, also this idea. So yeah, I thought that was a very great way to do it. And yes, I did read that chapter of your story or your book.
Cool. Yeah, I think that'd be a great short film.
Yeah.
You know, and have it really like noir and moody and like really cool. Like, you know, what you were saying is it's a different canvas.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And it's smart to know that too. Like what canvas should you use, or what style should you use to tell the story in the best way?
Yeah. I mean, once I mentioned this, I said, you know, I've never done a short film, but I really want to. And they said, why? And I said, well, for that reason, it's a canvas, and it's not meant to be a tool to try to make a feature. It's not meant to be something else. It's meant to be what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, oh, why are you doing that? It won't lead to this. No. I want to do it for the sake of this thing. In the same way that it would probably be, people would understand better if you were, oh, I'm going to make an album. I'm going to make a painting, because it's a different thing. That's why you're doing a short film, as opposed to, I'm doing this because I can't make a feature, or to make a feature. It's its own specific thing, which I think is great for anything. I mean, even in writing, I've noticed that I was turning something into, I've thought a feature at the time, and I realized I was having to cut so much stuff because I didn't have room for it. And then I was kind of racing to the end just to get to the end, because you have to finish a movie. And then I had been like, okay, this is the prequel. This is the sequel. This is the spinoff. And then it was like, oh, this is a television show. You know, there's a lot of movies that are coming out, or miniseries that are coming out now that people originally were trying, because that the miniseries form wasn't as prevalent. Thanks, Ryan Murphy. But especially on Netflix, like all the Scott Frank things like Godless, or oh my gosh, what's the chess one? What's the chess one everyone's
Queen's
in love
Gambit.
with? Yeah, Queen's Gambit, where, you know, everybody was trying to push those as movies. Well, because how else would you do it, quite honestly, back in the day? And then now those can exist in a miniseries, and oh, they're so much better. You're not cutting stuff out. They can really develop. Like, that is the right form for it. And when I was writing that one thing, I was like, oh, it's this. At the same time, if you were trying to write a television series and it was like, oh no, this is just about one day in a character's life. It's a fairly succinct story. It's cinematic in this way. Okay, cool. Well, that's actually a movie. You know, like, is this a feature? Is this a short film? Because I think that's where, I mean, it's not the only reason things would quotation mark fail, but where things fail because they're not the right canvas. You're trying to stretch out a story that shouldn't be. You're trying to cram in a story. Why sometimes adaptations of books, if you're trying to be literal to it, but just cut everything out, don't always work, because that's not the right thing. Where maybe if you had a mini series, or you thought of it totally different and made a story that was a movie based on the idea of the book, so it was its own thing that actually fit in that medium, you know, that would work. So that, I think, is a big, I don't want to say success, because I think making something that you wanted to make and expressing the ideas you wanted to express, make it a success. But just to use that terminology, that's where I think sometimes things fail, because it's not the right container.
What was the first thing you filmed?
I think in 2015, kind of went on a bit of a tear where little things. I feel like I maybe did 10 things that year, and then less subsequently, because I was with other stuff, or I was making bigger projects. But I remember as an actor, I'd gotten this short film. It was somebody over at AFI, and they were the writer director. And it was just like something they'd come up with, and it was super small crew. It was him, writer director, Don Shim, the cinematographer, Peter, who's a producer. And then we had kind of a rotating PA, and the other actress, or the actress, Sam, and I. And it was a great experience, because that's the size of the crew it should have been. We were in a house. It was intimate. It ended up looking really great. But because it was so small like that, it was very collaborative. And then I'd been on a bunch of sets as an actor and also I'm sure helping out people as well. But I was able to actually, I think they had one thing they're like trying to figure out. And I felt because it was so small and so intimate that I could just kind of jump in and be like, oh, well, you know, we could maybe do it this way and that would get what you want. And like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then we did it that way and that was great. And was able to, you know, be more collaborative, not just as an actor, but like, oh, well, how about this? And then I feel like that was a 2 or 3 day shoot. And the director's name was John, now that I just remember, just to throw everybody's name out there so he doesn't feel left out. But I felt, oh, wait, I could do this. You know, it was one of those things where, oh, no, I could, this isn't beyond me at all. And then I decided I was going to, you know, and I'd had something I'd written that I was going to maybe do with somebody. And then I just decided I would direct it. So that ended up being the first thing. That was called Men's Room. That turned out really great. I actually used Don, who's a great cinematographer, and Peter is my producer. So I basically pulled the cinematographer and producer from that, asked them if they wanted to do it. Got my friend Robin, who's a great actress, and got a whole crew, and we shot that. And it was funny too, because I wrote another short script to shoot, and I was really kind of torn because one I wanted to be in and one I wanted to direct. And I was trying to figure out which one to make. Like, I was like, okay, I kind of want to film this one, but I want to be in that one. But obviously I can't do both. And then this other one, I was like, okay, I could direct that. I was trying to figure out which one. And then I just kind of realized, oh, wait, I could do both, you know, and I could actually be in this one, which was so great that the first one I was in was the first one I directed, which was so great because had I been in Bad Plus, the second one I directed, which I was not in, I would not have been that other one because it was very challenging. I was like, oh man, this is crazy. It's always great. And I feel like you have no idea how much work projects are, which is great because otherwise you wouldn't do them. Or like the whole thing with like, you know, giving childbirth and then people forget what a pain it was. And then they have another one. It's kind of great not to know how hard or how much work something is because then you're already doing it and you have to finish. So I remember being on that set and then having to solve a lot of problems, but also still being an actor and a director for Men's Room. And it was great. I felt amazing because I did it. I made it happen. But if I had had an experience where I was just directing, I might have been a little bit scared about being in something as well, or like that big of a part in it. So it was one of those, I didn't know any better. And I'm so glad I did. And I was like, oh no, I can do this. And then so in subsequent things, I've also been in some of them. So that was great. And then that year too,
wait, hold on. Before we go further, tell them, because I loved Men's Room. Tell us, like, give us the lead into it. So tell us what was Men's Room and what's it about?
And basically it opens up. There's me, a guy in a men's room. And then, you know, it's like washing his hands because he's done his business. And all of a sudden a woman comes up next to him and is also washing her hands. And he's wondering why this is happening because it's a men's room and this is not a man. Very nonchalant about it. And then they kind of have a little bit of a meet cute, but it's very odd. And then she leaves. I kind of like missed my chance. I was like, no, I should go after her. And then she comes back to do the same thing right as I do, knocks me out with a door. And then it's cute. Maybe they're going to go on a date. Oh, this is sweet. Everything's great. And then she gives him her phone to put in his number as one would. And then while he's doing it, she gets a text, which comes up on her screen, which happens to be a picture of him. I could put it in your phone. Thanks. Mm-hmm. I'm actually free right now if you're available.
I've got a job in a bit.
Another time then.
I'd like that.
Me too. Oh, now you got a text. Oh, it's a picture of me.
What's
No, it is. Look. See, right there, me. What are you, some kind of amateur magician?
No fucking way. Every fucking time, it's gotta be something.
I'm sorry, did I do something wrong?
I don't know, did you?
Sarah, why do you have a picture of me on your phone?
That's why.
She ends up shooting me because she was a hit woman. I was her target. And she's very frustrated because she's been having a tough time at love. She finally thought she maybe made a nice connection with somebody. And nope, that was a target. And then obviously that also means that I was secretly kind of an asshole too. So it's a bummer for her, a day in her life. But yeah, that was Men's Room. And so that was fun to make.
I loved that movie, and I love the premise. I mean, you could see there's something where that's a beautiful, perfect short film.
Yeah,
but the character.
Yeah.
You could make a feature out of that character.
Right. I actually had started doing that. I never ended up finishing it, and that wasn't my original thought either. It was the character. It was the impetus. It would be kind of like I think, what was that, Hotel Chevalier or something that Wes Anderson did that was connected to the Darjeeling Limited. He made like a little short film with one of the characters and Natalie Portman, which had nothing to do with the movie, but it was kind of like an interesting character prelude that I think came with the DVD, or was kind of a promotion for it or something like that. So that's kind of what that was. That inspired a character that was interesting enough to take into her own, movie story.
Filmmaker and actor Doug Hurley. Another great guest of Filmmaking Confidential is The Enigma.
Being part of the Lollapalooza sideshow, which at that point, Lollapalooza was an amazing thing. 92 should have been called the William Morris Agency sideshow, because they're the ones that put us all around the world. And I became the most famous tattooed man in history because of that. I remember we opened for Nine Inch Nails in Madison Square Garden, 2 sold out nights. And, I stayed in a squat in the freezing cold.
You can get a link to my full interview with The Enigma at filmmakingconfidential.com or by subscribing for free to this podcast. We'll be right back with Mr. Hurley. Stay with us. I'm Steve Balderson, and this is the Filmmaking Confidential podcast. I'm back with filmmaker Doug Hurley.
I love that whole idea of just like being a hit woman and also struggling to find a boyfriend to settle down with. I mean,
that was kind of the whole premise of the movie. And then obviously, because you always want something to be about something. It was like, oh, the reason you're having trouble in your life in that respect, romantically or whatever it is because you're not exactly on the right path in your life, So it was like, oh, maybe being a hit woman, even though I'm very good at it, that's not my true calling. And maybe that's not the thing to be. And if you're doing something that that you're not called to do, that isn't your thing, you're just doing it because you think you have to, or you have nothing else to do perfunctorily, that affects the rest of your life. That's kind of even what I was talking about a little bit earlier, that if you're not doing the right thing at the right time for the right reasons, that's probably why other things are off, because you're not in your, I don't even know the clever word, your balance or your self or whatever it happens to be. So that's what that would have been about. And who knows, maybe it still will be. We'll find out.
Exactly. Well, and that's just a good metaphor for life in general. I mean, and if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, even if you're good at it, so long as you're supposed to be doing it and it's right and the balance is there, then it works out.
Everything tends, and I'm sure that's happened for everybody listening. It's happened for me. I'm sure it's happened for you. If you're not in the right lane, as far as what not what you told to be doing, but universally, like, this is the thing I should be doing, then things aren't. I actually read some quote about that today that was basically, it's like, oh, is it the dream that's unattainable, or is it the right dream? Something like that. Like, oh, why is this so hard? Oh, because maybe that's not what you're supposed to be doing, and then that affects everything. It's very interesting, I think, how life, the universe, your body, if you're not doing the right thing, it will let you know. And you just need to listen to that. I remember years and years ago, I had a friend who kept getting fired from these jobs or something. And then I ran into him a couple of years later. He's like, I shouldn't have, he was a bartender or something. And he's like, I shouldn't have been doing that. He just kept getting fired because he'd show up late, or he'd be drunk, or he'd do all these things. But instead of getting out of something he shouldn't have been in, he stayed in it. And then the universe was getting him out, and that's the same thing in relationships, when people are like, oh, I shouldn't be in this anymore, but I'm not going to break up with this person, but now I'm going to start being an ass, or whatever it happens to be, where you start acting out or things don't work out as well. And so that's just a good time to stop and really listen. Is like, is this what I should be doing, or is this how I should be doing it? You know, because that's the interesting thing I was thinking about actually yesterday with when I was saying, okay, should I still be acting? The first question is, you know, why should you be doing this? Why are you doing this? Oh, because I want to express myself and it feels good and I'm giving gifts to other people. Okay, great. No, cool. First question's answered. You still should be doing this. How should you be approaching it? You know, especially if you're trying to make a career out of it. And, you know, there's some times where if just as a metaphor, you're say like you're trying to get past a mountain and you keep walking into it and you're like bumping your head against it and you're never going to get through it. It's like, should you be trying to get past this? Okay. That was the first question. Yeah. Okay. I should be. And then does that mean you keep running into this mountain over and over, you know, until like your head's all bloody and you're like, you're not going to whatever. So then there's a certain point too, where like, I should still be doing this, but maybe I should approach it in a different way. You know, like, oh, I should walk around the mountain. I should climb the mountain. I should dig under it. I should get some explosives. I should find a buddy with a helicopter. I should learn how to astral project, whatever it happens to be, you know, like, oh, instead of, you know, like a typical path for actors might be like, I'm going to audition and get these co-stars and then get a guest star and then get a series regular. Like that's a pathway. And then that works for some people. And then other ways to get in would be like making your own stuff, you know, doing things that are very fulfilling to you and putting yourself out there in another way. And then that's more in alignment with yourself. So that actually pays off. Or, you know, because it's just, and this is very much you. It's like, here's how you make a movie. And you're like, why do you have to make movies that way? You can make movies this way. And it's like more fun, more what I want to do, more control, actually get made. People really like these. And so it is, you know, not just like, why am I doing this, but how am I doing this? And is this in alignment for me? And is this even the best way for it to work out how I would like it to? And then also realizing things will work out in ways you would never expect. And that was actually a better or the right way. So all of a sudden you're able to and feel better about it too. Because like, let's say, I mean, like if you're going to, whatever, like the acting thing, co-star or guest star, whatever, like if you feel great about that, keep doing it. You know, and if it's working, great, do that. But even if that did work, if you don't feel good about it or you're not happy, I've had plenty of friends like, oh, just keep doing this thing and it's not very fulfilling. Even if it did work, it's like they're not happy. And I will also say that also if you're in that mindset or that energy, like nothing's really going to work out because you're always like, you know. But if you're doing something where you're just like, you know, it's funny. A friend of mine, I'd come up with this concept for something that was, it was, my friend's name is Brian. He's an actor. He's very good. I came up with this thing called Brian Cleans with Cheese. It's about a guy. It's basically HGTV meets Adult Swim. And that he's a guy who's just trying to help you out. And his thing is like, he shows you how to clean different things with cheese, you know, and like, yeah,
as you do.
Yeah, as you do. And it just sounds like honestly, like a sketch and kind of a one-off. And I just kind of pitched it to him because he was like, oh no, this is a great idea. And it really surprised me how much we were able to talk about it and keep talking about it. And it wasn't just a one-off. And then as opposed to like, hey, we should do a thing. Yeah, totally. Okay. Yeah. Let's do that sometime. Sure. Okay. Yeah. You know, maybe in a couple of weeks. This was like probably a Tuesday. I was like, cool. I'm going to come over Sunday and we're going to film one because I knew it would never happen otherwise. You can go do this stuff, you know, like I think, and that's what's I think great about your book too, is like it gives specific tips and stories, which are great and interesting and fun, but it's a mindset. That's what I really like about the book is it teaches you a mindset that when you're like, oh, here's how you as a person can go make stuff and here's how you do it. And then you can just approach things as opposed to like, I'd like to do that to actually, I want to do that and go out and do that. And so with the Brian Cleans with Cheese, it's whatever idea, but it's so bizarre that we've had ideas for years. I'm like, here's the spin-off movie and here's the TV series and here's the merchandise. And everybody we showed it to is weirdly into it. And it's just like this kind of, it makes no sense to me. And I'm just shooting it on the iPhone for now.
Right.
We're putting it on Instagram at Brian Cleans with Cheese. Brian with a Y, Cleans with an E, Cheese with 3 E's, Dub with no E's. And, you know, I'm sure it'll go other places at some point. That was just, you can make stuff, you know, and then you do. And that's not, no one would have said like, oh, this is how you should make a movie, Steve. This is what you should do. It was just like, it was an idea and we didn't say no. It seemed right and we didn't say no. And now it's kind of becoming a thing. We're just putting it out now, but it's getting good response. And at the end of the day, we're just having a really fun time making it. And it's so fun for us. And I think that transfers, and that's pretty much it. This is something that we're interested in doing. That's fun. And we're putting it out there so other people can have fun and enjoy it. And so that ends up doing pretty well if that's the place you're coming from with things, versus like, I need to do this because this is how you succeed, or this is what is expected of me. It's like, okay, well, this feels right, even though it's kind of silly. All right, this feels really good. All right, it's fun. I guess we're going to keep doing it as long as we feel good about it. Yeah, okay. You know, and then everybody else's response, because it's true, or like the movies you make, it's like, oh, wow, you had a clear vision. Everybody's having a good time. What a great experience to be able to watch this movie and share it with you.
Totally. That's so great. Before I open it up for Q&A, tell us the story of Suicide Date.
Mike Nelson, who's an amazing actor, great guy, producer too. He's always really good about connecting people. He was having kind of a makers and doers meetup, and we were reading some different things. And so I brought that because I had it. And then he was like, wow, we should make this. And I was like, okay, sure. You know, whatever. And then a couple months passed and I was like, oh no, you know what? We should make it. And then we did. He produced the heck out of it. We got amazing actors, Sarah Stouffer, whose name hopefully I didn't mispronounce this time, Joel Steingold, Camille Chen, all amazing actors. Sean McDaniel, cinematographer, and it turned out super great. Big crew. Everybody really enjoyed it. We premiered at Dances with Films. Was a great festival. We had a really great big turnout, and then we ended up actually also winning the audience award for our category, which was amazing. And then we ended up winning the audience award for the entire fest, which was crazy, great. And then which somehow qualified us for the Academy Awards, which we did not win or get nominated for that matter. But that was a fun experience too. And then it's a nice little festival run, and we're going to actually be releasing it soon online. So probably by the time this comes out, maybe it exists somewhere.
Well, we have some of our studio audience.
Great.
Hi, Doug.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Do you have
other Doug?
A question for other Doug?
No, what's fascinating is the whole thing about that I just loved is he's going through so many different things and directions that feed into whatever you're doing. And I've had the same experience where you either go off onto tangents. I was originally an art major in college, and I got this. And so what was keeping me alive was doing graphic arts for a while. And then the acting, a time in my life, I decided, you know what, I really want to seriously pursue this. So it fed into my vision of things, which then that eventually led into working with people and started to see how they dealt with directing or writing or producing. I was in a theater company and there weren't any plays that were coming in that were worth doing. And I finally said, well, why don't I write something? Exactly. So that opened up a whole nother door, and also realizing what writers go through. So it everything added to the experience, which I thought was fascinating.
Everything leads to everything and is useful, you know, and part of it's just being able to see that and not be scared of it. Like, oh, maybe I would like to do this. Well, why not? And like I said, that's what's great about Steve. It's like, cool, I'm going to go do this thing. And then realizing there's like the old saying, like, if you know one thing, you know 8 things, or how you do one thing is how you do everything, or whatever. And it's like, oh, wow, it's all life. It all kind of goes together. It's all art. It's all communication. And it's amazing how doing all those things that you're talking about make any amount of that richer, you know. And that's even what I was talking about earlier, where I was trying to, okay, am I doing too much instead of focusing? And there is something to be said for that, let's be honest, and deadlines and etc. But this one thing I'm doing is much richer, you know, because of these other things that I'm doing, let alone my life is much richer, you know, which is the most important thing.
A broader scope of things.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, for me, the joy has always been, and it sounds like with you, the fact that when it quits being fun, there are other ways to make money.
Yeah.
And the acting and that is part of the joy, the people you meet, the experiences you gain. And you're always, at least for me, I'm always learning something when I'm on set.
Totally.
Or with other actors, there's always something to go, wow, I didn't know that. That's great. And you just keep filling it up.
It is always nice to hear other people too and be like, oh, it's not just me. Not that you shouldn't have permission otherwise, but it is good to just be like, that is too. My friend's a meditation teacher and I took her meditation 1 class and it was great. But the thing that was the most useful was just realizing that, oh, wait, she was like talking about like, oh, the voice in your head that like negative self-talking, like, wait, other people have that too? Or now people are a lot more open about, you know, depression or things like that. And just knowing that, oh, other people struggle with the same thing and they're living their life or they look successful. And it's like, oh, okay, it's okay to be this way. And I think that's, as an artist, as a filmmaker, like the most important thing, just to be like, oh yeah, how are we alike? Or it's okay, or it's not just you, or that's not something to be ashamed of or worry about. It's like, oh, we're all dealing with this. Oh, we're all together. That's like the biggest relief and gift I feel like you can give anyone, you know, and also to receive as well. Because there's been plenty of times where, you know, and that's great to hear from you too. I'm like, oh, cool. All right. So seem like a great, happy guy. He's doing a bunch of stuff. Okay. So I am on the right path. Okay, cool. I'll keep doing that. This is okay. And not that you should have to have permission, but it's nice to get that and also to give that to yourself and see that in, you know, everyone else.
Thanks so much for coming on today, Doug. We appreciate it so much.
Oh, yeah.
But I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the whole line of doing what you love and still being able to make a living.
In the same way that there's like a different container for things or a different canvas, as Steve was saying, there's also a different way to go about doing things. If you're doing things in your life that feed you, when you're doing your day job, when you're doing your other thing, hopefully it's something that you enjoy as well. That still fulfills you because you're, you know, if you're not doing the thing you want to be doing, whether it's full time or as a hobby, then, you know, that's going to affect your soul and you're not going to be in a great place. But if you're able to express yourself, even if it's on the weekends or night or, you know, when you have time, then that carries on to the rest of your life. And also, however many years ago I was catering and my friend Jana, who's bartending, is also on a bunch of shows. You know, actually had some really success, but, you know, when he didn't, he was still doing that to support his family because why wouldn't you? And he never, at least to me, seemed to get down on it because there's always the people like, I'm better than this. And like, I shouldn't be here. And I was like, actually, this guy's like the most successful of all of us. And he's just happy to be here because he was just like being present, doing his thing. He was working real hard and doing a great job. You know, had his full life and was happy to be there and not upset to be where he was at. And then I think that, you know, led to him being a much happier person, having success in other aspects of his life.
Any actor friend that I have who is a waiter, bartender, caterer, whatever, and they're complaining, I always try to reframe it for them and say, why don't you go to work in a different part each day?
Yeah.
You know, like, why don't you today, you're going to talk like this to everybody you talk to, you know, like, and then the next day you're going to be a different character and you can actually turn your work into practice, right? Like working the muscle.
Yeah. And I think reframing is good like that, 100%. And then another reframe that I'll give to you as well. And this was helpful to me about trying to align all the disparate things I did. Christina, who I was talking about, is a meditation teacher, was always like, figure out what your overlying purpose is as a person. You know, like, oh, I throw parties or I try and do these event things and I'm making these movies. And it was all seemed like a bunch of different stuff all over the place. But if you know, look at over your one overlying purpose, whatever it happens to be, like, you know, to help to open people up, then it's like, oh, wait, that all goes with people, you know, and then if you have that, then I think your quotation mark day job or whatever can be under that too. Like, so if mine's to open people and help them out, or to help them a good experience or appreciate life or whatever it is, then like that obviously is filmmaking. And maybe that's why I'm doing these events with friends. But then when I'm at the bar or the waiting or whatever, then it's like, oh, I'm to help these people out and make them feel good and do this. So that's actually part of my overall purpose versus, I should be making movies and I'm just slinging hash, you know? And so it's like, oh, cool. Well, I'm here on this planet to give back or to open people up and help them out. Making movies and acting is one way of that. So is writing. So is being a good neighbor. So is being a high school volleyball coach and having this group and that group. And so in addition to what you're saying, which I think is super fun and great about reframing and being a character, it's like go for where you're going, but also be happy and be in the present. Like, because you're not doing the one thing that you think you have to do or should be doing doesn't mean like everything sucks and be negative and be a failure. It's like, oh, that's part of the whole thing. And the whole thing is my purpose, or the whole thing is my life. And so opening it up like that and reframing it like that, that allows you to actually enjoy being there. And then the funny thing is too, if you are enjoying being there and you have a better life, you have more energy and that, but also then that's when people notice that, or that's when you carry it to the rest of your life. And people are like, we want to work with this person with the great energy who's just giving because they're, you know, want to be of use and service to people and isn't all stressed out about this stuff. And like, wow, I want to be around this. This is inspiring. And then, oh, because you embraced the thing that wasn't your dream, it actually, that mind reframing or mind shift allowed you to get closer to it, also enjoying your life more in the meantime.
Filmmaker and actor Doug Hurley. You can see Men's Room on Doug Hurley's Vimeo channel and follow him at Mr. Doug Hurley on Instagram. Tune in next time for more Filmmaking Confidential. It is totally free to subscribe, and when you subscribe, you'll get upcoming new episodes automatically. And you'll have free access to all our past shows. The Filmmaking Confidential podcast is a production of Dakanga Audio and produced by myself and Ella Spencer. Our theme music is composed by Kevin Robles. For more of the Filmmaking Confidential podcast, head over to filmmakingconfidential.com. To learn more of my filmmaking secrets, be sure to pick up a copy of the book, Filmmaking Confidential, available on Audible, paperback, and ebook, wherever books are sold. I'm Steve Balderson. Thanks for listening and spreading the word. Until next time, keep making, keep doing, keep going.